Article 3, the Book of Parables, the stories of the Earthkeepers. We often forget that we are nature. Nature is not something separate from us. So when we say that we have lost our connection to nature, we've lost our connection to ourselves. Andy Goldsworthy, The Seeds of the Forgotten, The Warnings of the Earthkeepers. Long before the famine, long before the Great Blight, the Earthkeepers spoke of balance. They whispered their warnings to the wind, carved them into bark, wove them into the soil itself. They knew that the land provides in cycles, and that to take without tending is to invite ruin. They planted not just for themselves, but for the generations yet to come. They walked the hidden paths of the rooted ones, those who had long forsaken the stone cities to live as stewards of the mycelium's design. Their forests were not wild chaos, but intentional sanctuaries stacked with food-bearing trees, layered with roots and vines, woven with the unseen threads of the web. Yet the cities did not listen. They razed the forests, stretched fields of grain beyond the horizon, turned rivers from their courses. They stripped the land bare, believing they had mastered the cycle. But the mycelium does not forget, and when it speaks, it is not with words, but with silence. The Great Blight, a warning unheeded. At first, the blight came softly. A single field of wheat, its tips blackened as if kissed by frost, then another, and another. The stalks crumbled, rotting in their roots, turning to ash in the hands of those who once called themselves farmers. Rye suffered as the wheat. Barley turned to dust. The soil, once rich and dark, grew thin and pale, as though something had pulled its breath away. The people panicked. They tried new seeds, new machines, new chemicals. They burned the fields, believing fire would purge the sickness. They dug deeper, clawing at the land as if it would yield to desperation. But the land had already spoken. The mycelium, which had once woven harmony beneath their feet, retracted. The web withdrew its tendrils, and with it, the life of the soil. Within a year, the cities began to starve. Within 2, they began to fall. The sanctuary of the rooted ones, but deep in the green hollows, beyond the reach of the blight, the Earthkeepers endured. Their food forests stood untouched, their roots still strong, their fungi still thriving beneath the canopy. The mycelium had not abandoned them, for they had never abandoned it. Their secret was not in any single plant, but in the interwoven layers of abundance. The overstory, walnut, chestnut, and haruv trees stood resilient, their branches heavy with nourishment. The fruiting understory, persimmons, figs, pear, and elderberries swelled with life, untouched by the sickness. The ground and vines, grapes, melons, and squash coiled through the branches, hiding their harvest high above. The hidden roots, burdock, dandelion, wild yam, and Jerusalem artichoke lay buried beneath the soil, waiting for hands that knew where to dig. The sacred clearings, small pockets of annual grains and pulses, carefully rotated and guarded by the surrounding trees, their fertility woven into the web rather than stripped from it. Where the cities desired monoculture, the Earthkeepers planted variety. Where the cities demanded control, the rooted ones practiced balance. And so, when the world fell to silence, they alone had food. The seekers of the forgotten ways, when hunger gripped the land, those who had once mocked the Earthkeepers became seekers. They stumbled from the dying cities, gaunt and hollow-eyed, searching for something they had long forgotten. Some came in peace, offering their hands in work, their minds in humility. Others came in anger and desperation, with blades and violence, willing to take what they had refused to plant. The rooted ones did not turn away the hungry, but neither did they allow greed to take root. You do not eat today what you cannot plant for tomorrow, they warned. Some understood. The first season, those who remained ate only what they could gather. The second season, those who endured planted hazelnut groves and chestnut trees, digging roots into the land they had once ignored. By the third season, The green hollows were no longer just a sanctuary. They had become the foundation of a new world. The return of the graying. A decade passed before the blight faded. When the sickness finally loosened its grip, the people left their broken cities and ventured into the wastelands where their fields had once stood. They expected to reclaim their old lives. They expected the land to forgive. But the fields did not remember them. The soil remained empty, barren, unwilling to yield to their return. Only in the green hollows did life remain. Only among the Earthkeepers and rooted ones did the people find nourishment. The seekers who had stayed, who had listened, carried the knowledge forward. They did not plant fields of weakness, but forests of strength. They did not ask what the land could give, but what they could give back. They no longer sought dominion over the soil. They sought partnership, the oath of the seed-bearers. And so the Earthkeepers walked their groves, tending the trees they had planted before the fall. They taught the young ones born into the famine the ways of the mycelium not as myth, but as truth. The seekers who had become stewards spoke the old wisdom, passing it from hand to hand, root to root. The cycle began anew. For true survival is not in hoarding, but in planting. For true abundance is not in storing, but in growing. For true wisdom is knowing that when the darkness comes again, those who tend to the land will never go hungry. And so, beneath the moonlit canopy, among the whispering fungi, the faithful spoke once more. Plant now, and when the hunger returns, the land will remember.